we can very quickly label our children's behavior as part of their personality. And we can put these labels on our children and then view them through the lens of that label.
Hi, my name is Becky Jennings, and this is the Response-Able Parenting Podcast. I give you the transformational tools to stop reacting to your children in the moment and start responding with intention.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Response-Able Parenting Podcast. This is Becky Jennings, and today we are going to talk about windows and mirrors. Not because I'm super excited about a remodel coming up for our house, but because windows and mirrors offer a completely new perspective for us. So for me, I find that it's very easy to get stuck in a pattern, a routine, a rut, and we're just repeating the same thing over and over and over again. In the book Drama Free by Nedra Glover Tawwab, she talks about how it is so much easier and way more common for us to do the exact same thing over and over versus learn anything new. And I find that that's been increasingly more visible from 2020 to 2023 when we have been shown so many different perspectives. And it has kind of put us in a position where we are othering each other and we are painting each other in a way that does not serve the greater good. To the point where I just recently read a poll that most of us agree on the direction that we want the country to go on, but we are so consumed with the rhetoric of othering each other, and we are so consumed with the dialogue and the picture that is being painted for us that we're losing perspective. And so I can also relate that to parenting. We can very quickly label our children's behavior as part of their personality. And we can put these labels on our children and then view them through the lens of that label. So I was numbing out and scrolling on social media, as we sometimes do. And I came across a teacher who was educating her kids on what windows and mirrors were. She was reading a story and she explained how the characters in that story to some people in the class were mirrors, which showed them similar perspective of their lives. It showed them similar experiences. Maybe they identified with that person more clearly, maybe showed some motivations that matched their own. Whereas in other books, they might be reading things that show windows, right? Other person's identities, other person's experiences and motivations. And I found that to be such a beautiful way of teaching our children not only to recognize that everybody doesn't have to feel like we feel, everybody doesn't have to act like we act, that the otherness in other people should be explored versus rejected. There's a lot of movies out that I'm seeing, specifically coming to mind, Sea Beast, which is on Netflix, and my son is obsessed with it because he's obsessed with all things dragons and mythical creatures and big, huge, gigantic beings. And in the storyline of Sea Beast, there's these huge creatures in the water that that humans are very terrified of, and they hunt them and they destroy them. And there's this tiny little girl who is about the size of half of one of their eyeballs. And she is able to explain to the society, to the king and the queen who want this to keep going, that it's the stories that we create about others that are more scary than the actual person. And it's the storylines that we create maybe about the fears of how our children are going to turn out if they don't do their homework, or if they push a kid on the playground, the future projection of how they will be the bully. It's these stories that we create that can force us into reacting in a way that doesn't allow us to explore more. So I want to talk about how our children can also be windows and mirrors for ourselves. And I find that my children are my biggest mirrors. And my therapist and I talk about what mirrors are all the time. That when something is triggered within you, it's not necessarily the other person's fault for triggering you. It is a reaction within you telling you the areas of yourself that still need work. So when my child does something that I don't agree with or that doesn't sit well with me, it is my job as a parent, as a person who is actively working on emotional growth and intelligence and actively working on becoming a better, more accepting, resilient person, to look at that trigger further, to go deeper into my own body and figure out the root of that trigger. It's not my child's responsibility to act perfectly so that I do not get triggered. It is actually their job to push against boundaries. It is actually their job to question their place. It's actually their job, and we should be encouraging questioning authority. Why are we doing what we are doing? Because it's not going well right now. I will say that. But when my children trigger me, it takes a tremendous amount of effort to jot it down as a trigger and then go back and explore it. That's not generally what we do. And so I want to encourage this, and I'm starting to put it into practice in my own life, and to look at what our children do as mirrors of where we can start to grow within ourselves. And also, what about our children can we look through? Can we explore? Can we identify? Can we realize that they might identify completely differently than us? Like, I believe that there's a part of us that feels like our children should act in a way that makes our lives easier. And what if our children are here to be our teachers? What if our children are here to help us be better? I would argue that they are. That every single day we're pushed to our emotional threshold and then we are forced to give a little bit more. That's growth. Every day we have opportunities for growth. And it's up to us to recognize those opportunities. And we can look at them as opportunities for growth, or we can look at them as opportunities to stay stuck in our cycled patterns that are not serving us, or maybe not serving them, and maybe not serving the greater good. So I encourage you to, when your children push up against a very solid trigger in your life, in your body, to recognize that as an opportunity for growth, and to recognize that your children's behavior is probably something within you that you don't like within you. So how can we go deeper and figure that out? And then how can we as parents model the fact that the people around us are not necessarily the scary other? Trust me, this is something I have to deeply work on. And how can we look at people's identities and experiences as mirrors? And how can we look at other people's identities, experiences, motivations, belief systems as windows? Because I do believe if we continue down this path of othering everybody and removing ourselves from certain groups because they no longer align with our thought processes and our belief systems, then we're doing ourselves a great disservice, because we are now no longer even attempting to figure out the commonality. We're no longer attempting to find the humanness within other people. We are all going through things. We are all experiencing different traumas. We're all experiencing different events. And I think it's so easy to lump people into the same category. My husband and I were having a charged political discussion a couple nights back, and it was a Republican Democratic debate. I know I probably shouldn't be talking about politics on a parenting podcast. I'm not going to go into belief systems or anything like that. But he was saying, there are gray areas in politics. There are people who align with part of the Republican Party and not parts of the Republican Party. There are people who align with more moderate Democrats and not necessarily liberal stances. So when we continue to just say, you're this, you're that, this is this label I'm going to put on you, this is that label I'm going to put on you, and I'm going to separate myself from you because you don't believe in exactly the same belief system that I do, it's going to create isolated chunks of people at war with each other, because we are no longer seeing the human in front of us. And I believe that our children are these beautifully innocent beings teaching us that every single day at home. They are constantly teaching us what we do not like in ourselves, because every single trigger that we feel from them is an opportunity for us to dig deeper. And as we dig deeper, we recognize how we can be better and show up better. And if we can do that more at home, in the tiny little ecosystem that is safe in our homes, hopefully this can spill out further, where we don't view people as others. We don't view people as bad or good, and we strip some of the labeling off of them, strip some of the labeling off of our children, and we can see people as windows and as mirrors. And we can start to recognize the community and the commonalities within us and the areas of growth within us and as community. And hopefully, this growth can lead to a softening and more gentleness and maybe more capacity to hold each other in our own human experience. These are very lofty goals. I get it. And it starts at home. Everything starts at home, is what I'm realizing. Like literally everything starts at home. And everything starts within us. And so taking these moments when you're triggered by something on the news, when you're triggered by an event, when you are triggered by something somebody says about you or your parenting, when you are triggered by what your child says or what your child does, take that as a moment, jot it down, and do the inner work to figure out why it was so jarring. And when we can do that, that is true growth. That is our ability to open space and hold people in their humanness. And hopefully from there, we can all be more responsible people. Thank you, and I will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Response Able Parenting Podcast. If you like what you heard, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. If you know someone who would benefit from this podcast, I'd be honored if you'd share the episode with them. Until next time, know that you are enough. You are capable. You've made it through all of your hardest days, and we will keep growing on this parenting journey together.